Rain poured heavily on the dimly lit streets as Emily hurried towards the small diner where she worked. It wasn't a grand place, just a simple eatery on the corner of a quiet town. She had been working there for years, serving coffee and meals to the same familiar faces. But tonight, something felt different. As she reached the back entrance, she noticed a frail, shivering dog curled up beside the dumpster. His fur was matted, his ribs visible through his thin skin. His eyes, however, held a gentle plea, a silent cry for help. Emily's heart clenched at the sight. She had always been kind to animals, and seeing this poor creature in such a state made her decision easy. She bent down, whispering softly, "Hey there, little guy. You must be starving." She reached into her bag, pulling out a sandwich she had saved for her break. Carefully, she unwrapped it, tearing a small piece and holding it out. The dog hesitated at first, his weary eyes locked onto hers, assessing whether she was a threat or a friend. Then, with trembling hesitation, he inched forward and gently took the food from her hand. For the next few minutes, Emily sat with him, breaking off pieces of her sandwich, watching as he devoured them with desperate hunger. She could see old scars on his body, signs of past struggles, of a life spent fighting for survival. Her chest tightened. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" she murmured, running her fingers lightly over his damp fur. Just then, a voice snapped through the air. "Emily, what do you think you're doing?" She jerked her head up to see her boss, Mr. Carter, standing at the back door, his face twisted in anger. He was a strict man, running the diner with an iron fist, and he had little patience for anything that wasted time. Emily scrambled to her feet. He looked hungry," she explained, motioning towards the dog. Mr. Carter's eyes flickered with annoyance. "This is a business, not a charity. We don't feed strays here. Get inside now." Emily hesitated, glancing down at the dog, who now whimpered softly, sensing the hostility in Mr. Carter's voice. She knew she couldn't just leave him here. Without thinking, she straightened her back. "I'll take care of him. He's not hurting anyone." Mr. Carter's expression darkened. "Did I stutter, Emily?" Inside, now, the diner owner had always been a hard man, but this was different. His fury was raw, his patience gone. But Emily had made her decision. She crouched down, running a soothing hand over the dog's head. "Come on, buddy, let's get you somewhere safe," she whispered. As she stood up to leave, Mr. Carter's voice cut through the rain. "Don't bother coming back tomorrow. You're fired." The words hit her like a slap. She had worked at the diner for years, poured her soul into it. And now, just like that, she was being cast aside for showing kindness. She opened her mouth to argue, but saw the coldness in Mr. Carter's gaze. There was no changing his mind. A lump formed in her throat, but she swallowed it down. "Fine," she said, her voice steady. "If that's what it takes to do the right thing, then so be it." With the stray dog trailing beside her, she stepped out into the rain, her heart pounding. What now? She had no plan, no backup. was due soon, and she had no savings to fall back on. But as she looked down at the dog, his eyes filled with gratitude, his tail wagging faintly despite the cold, she knew she had done the right thing. They walked together through the streets, the rain soaking through her clothes. She would figure something out. She always had. But fate had other plans. Just as she turned a corner, a black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down, revealing an older man with kind eyes. "Excuse me, miss," he said. "Did I just see what happened back there?" Emily hesitated, nodding slowly. The man sighed. "I've been looking for someone like you." Her brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" He smiled. "Someone with a good heart. I run an animal shelter, and I need people who actually care about these creatures. Would you be interested in a job?" Emily's breath caught in her throat. A job. A chance to help animals like the dog beside her. It was too good to be true. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I would." The man grinned. "Great, hop in. Let's get that little guy checked out first." Emily lifted the stray into her arms, holding him close as she slid into the warm car. As they drove away, she looked back at the diner one last time. Mr. Carter had fired her for kindness, but kindness had given her something far better, a future where she could make a real difference. And as the dog curled up against her, safe and warm for the first time in who knew how long, she knew she had made the right choice. The ride to the shelter was quiet, except for the soft patter of rain against the windows. Emily held the stray dog close, feeling his body relax against her warmth. For the first time since she had found him, he seemed at peace. The older man driving the car glanced at her and smiled. "My name's Richard, by the way. I run Hope Haven, a small animal rescue just outside town," he said. Emily turned to him, her heart still racing from the events of the evening. "I'm Emily," she replied, offering a small, tired smile. "And this little guy, I haven't named him yet." Richard chuckled. "Looks like he already sees you as his person. That's a rare kind of trust." Emily looked down at the dog, whose weary eyes blinked up at her with quiet gratitude. She felt a lump form in her throat. She had lost her job, but she had gained something far more precious, a purpose. When they reached the shelter, Emily was surprised to see how well kept it was. The building was old, but sturdy. The sign above the entrance slightly faded, but still welcoming. Inside, the warmth was immediate, both in temperature and in spirit. Volunteers moved about, tending to animals, their voices gentle and reassuring. Richard led her to a quiet corner where a vet was already waiting. "Let's get your little friend checked out," he said. Emily carefully placed the stray dog on the examination table, watching anxiously as the vet inspected him. "He's malnourished, but otherwise, no major injuries," the vet confirmed. "With good care, he'll recover just fine." Relief washed over Emily. She ran a hand through the dog's scruffy fur, whispering, "You're safe now." The dog licked her hand, a small gesture of trust that made her eyes well up with tears. Richard observed her closely before speaking. "Emily, I meant what I said earlier. We need people like you. People who care, who are willing to put their hearts into this work. Would you consider joining us here?" Emily hesitated, not because she was unsure, but because the offer seemed almost unreal. A chance to work with animals, to be part of something meaningful. It was everything she had ever wanted. I'd love to," she finally said, her voice thick with emotion. Richard grinned. "Then welcome to Hope Haven." Just like that, Emily found herself with a new path, one she had never expected, but felt entirely right. Over the next few weeks, Emily dedicated herself to the shelter. She learned quickly how to care for injured animals, how to comfort those who had been abandoned or abused. She bonded with the other volunteers, who welcomed her with open arms. Most of all, she grew closer to the stray dog she had rescued. She named him Buddy, and he never left her side. At night, when she lay in her small apartment, Buddy curled up beside her, his soft breaths a reminder of the life she had saved, and the life that had saved her in return. One evening, as she was finishing up at the shelter, she received an unexpected visitor. Mr. Carter stood at the entrance, looking out of place among the wagging tails and playful barks. Emily stiffened. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Mr. Carter cleared his throat, avoiding her gaze. "I heard about what you're doing here," he said gruffly. "Word travels fast in a small town." Emily crossed her arms, and he sighed, shifting uncomfortably. I might have been too harsh that night." Emily raised an eyebrow, waiting. Mr. Carter let out a breath. "Look, I run a business. I don't have time to think about every stray that wanders by. But maybe I was wrong to fire you." Emily studied him for a moment. The man who had once barked orders at her now looked almost unsure of himself. "You're right," she said simply. "You were wrong, Mr." Carter nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "I guess I came to say, if you ever want your job back, the door's open." Emily's heart clenched, not with longing, but with realization. She had once thought that diner was all she had. Now, standing in the shelter, surrounded by wagging tails and grateful eyes, she knew she had found something better. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," she said, a small smile on her lips. "But I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." Mr. Carter looked around, taking in the sight of animals being cared for, of volunteers working with patience and love. He nodded slowly. "Good luck, Emily," he said, before turning to leave. Emily watched him go, feeling a deep sense of closure. She had chosen kindness over convenience, and it had led her here. As Buddy nuzzled against her leg, she knelt down, pressing a kiss to his head. "We made it, didn't we?" she whispered. The little dog wagged his tail, his eyes shining with a happiness she had never seen before. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness could change everything, and for Emily, feeding that one hungry stray had rewritten her entire future. Emily stood in the middle of the shelter, feeling a warmth she had never known before. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind, and yet everything about this place felt like home. Buddy had transformed under her care. His ribs were no longer visible. His fur had regained its shine, and most importantly, his eyes sparkled with trust. He followed her everywhere, his small paws tapping against the shelter's floor, his tail wagging at every kind word she spoke. The other volunteers had started calling him her shadow, and she didn't mind one bit. Every morning, he greeted her with the same boundless enthusiasm, reminding her that love, once given, only grew stronger. One afternoon, as Emily was helping Richard sort through adoption papers, the shelter's phone rang. She picked up, expecting another inquiry about adopting a pet, but the voice on the other end took her by surprise. "Hello, is this Emily?" a woman asked hesitantly. "Yes, this is Emily," she replied, glancing at Richard, who looked up curiously. The woman hesitated before continuing. "My name is Margaret. I saw the news article about your shelter and the dog you rescued." Emily's grip on the phone tightened. "Buddy?" she asked. "Yes, I think he might be mine," the woman said softly. Emily's heart clenched. She looked down at Buddy, who was curled up beside her feet. He had been hers for weeks now, her companion, her friend. The thought of losing him sent a sharp pang through her chest. "Can you tell me more?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. Margaret took a deep breath. "I lost my dog 2 years ago. His name was Charlie. We searched everywhere, but we never found him. Then I saw his picture in the article, and I knew." Emily swallowed hard. Could it really be true? Had Buddy Charlie been lost all this time, waiting for someone to find him? Margaret arrived at the shelter an hour later, her hands trembling as she stepped inside. The moment Buddy saw her, he froze. Emily watched, her heart pounding. The little dog's ears perked up, his nose twitching as he took in the familiar scent. Then, without warning, he bolted toward Margaret, his tail wagging wildly. The woman fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she opened her arms. "Charlie," she sobbed. Buddy whimpered, pressing his small body against her, licking her face with frantic desperation. Emily blinked back tears. It was him. After all this time, he had found his way back home. A lump formed in Emily's throat as she watched the reunion unfold. She should be happy. Buddy had a family, a home, a person who had never stopped looking for him. But deep inside, an ache settled in her chest. She had imagined a future with him, waking up every day with his tiny body curled against hers. Now, that future was slipping away. She turned to Richard, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't believe this," she said, forcing a smile. Richard placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Love always finds its way back, Emily. And you've done something incredible. You brought them back together." Margaret finally looked up, wiping her tears. "Emily, I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I never thought I'd see him again." Emily forced herself to smile. "He's a special little guy," she whispered, reaching down to scratch Buddy's ears. The dog turned to her, his tail slowing as he nudged her hand. Emily felt a sharp pang. Did he know this was goodbye? Margaret stood, holding Buddy close. "I should take him home," she said softly. Emily nodded. "Of course," she said, but her voice cracked. Margaret hesitated. "Unless," she began, looking at Buddy, then back at Emily. "Unless you'd like to visit. I mean, if you want to see him sometimes." Emily's eyes widened. "You'd let me do that?" Margaret nodded. "Of course. You saved him. You're part of his story now." Tears welled in Emily's eyes, but this time they weren't just from sadness. She looked down at Buddy Charlie one last time. "You're going home, little guy," she whispered, stroking his fur. "I'll miss you, but I'm so happy for you." The dog licked her hand, his small way of saying goodbye. And just like that, Margaret carried him out the door, disappearing into the evening light. Emily stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty space where Buddy had been. Richard sighed beside her. "You okay?" he asked. Emily took a deep breath. "Yeah," she said, wiping her eyes. "I think I am." She turned back to the shelter, the place that had given her a purpose, and smiled. "Come on. We've got more animals to save." And with that, Emily stepped forward, ready to change another life, just as Buddy had changed hers days past. But the shelter felt different without Buddy. Emily found herself pausing at the corner where he used to nap, glancing at the food bowl. She hadn't moved from its place. Richard noticed her quietness, but didn't push her to talk. He knew loss, even when it was a good kind, still left a mark. She buried herself in work, taking care of other rescues, but her heart ached. Every dog she bathed, every paw she bandaged, reminded her of the tiny soul who had stolen her heart. She wondered if he was happy, if he missed her the way she missed him. But she had done the right thing. Buddy was where he belonged. One evening, as she was cleaning up the shelter, her phone buzzed. She wiped her hands on her apron and picked up. "Hello," she answered. "Emily, it's Margaret," the voice on the other end said. Emily's heart skipped a beat. "Oh, hi," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Margaret hesitated. I wanted to thank you again. Charlie, Buddy, he's doing great. But there's something I need to tell you." Emily gripped the phone tighter. "What is it?" Margaret sighed. "He won't eat unless I put the bowl near my feet, like he did with you. And at night, he still waits by the door. I think he misses you." Emily felt her throat tighten. "I miss him too," she admitted softly. Margaret took a deep breath. Would you like to visit him?" Emily blinked, surprised. "You mean it?" "Of course," Margaret said warmly. "You're part of his story, Emily. I don't want to take that away." Emily's chest filled with something she hadn't felt in days, hope. "I'd love that," she whispered. "How about tomorrow?" Margaret offered. Emily didn't even hesitate. "I'll be there." The next day, Emily arrived at Margaret's house, her heart pounding. Would Buddy still recognize her? Had he already moved on? She knocked on the door, and within seconds, she heard frantic scratching on the other side. The door swung open, he was Buddy, his tail wagging furiously, his little paws leaping toward her. "Hey, Buddy," she whispered, kneeling to meet him. He covered her face with excited licks, his body trembling with joy. Margaret smiled from the doorway. "I think he remembers you." Emily spent hours at Margaret's house, playing with Buddy, catching up on everything she had missed. Margaret told her about his favorite new treats, the little bed she had bought him, the way he still curled up with a piece of Emily's old sweater that Margaret had saved. "He still needs you," Margaret admitted, "and I think, in a way, you need him too." Emily looked at Buddy, who had fallen asleep against her side, and knew Margaret was right. Margaret hesitated. "Emily, I have an idea. What if you shared custody?" Emily's eyes widened. "Shared custody? You mean you take him for a few days a week, and I take him for the rest," Margaret suggested. "That way, he doesn't have to choose, and neither do we." Emily stared at her, overwhelmed by gratitude. "You'd really do that?" Margaret nodded. "Of course. Buddy loves you. And love isn't about possession. It's about doing what's best for them." Emily felt her eyes sting. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'd love that." And just like that, Buddy became part of both their lives. Some days, he was at Margaret's house, curled up by the fireplace, living the quiet, warm life he had lost years ago. Other days, he was at the shelter, greeting new rescues, reminding them that even the loneliest hearts could find a home. And through it all, Emily realized something sometimes. Love didn't mean letting go completely. Sometimes, love found a way to stay. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt whole again. Knowing Buddy was still a part of her life filled the empty space in her heart. Every morning, she woke up with excitement, counting down the days until he would be with her again. And when those days came, it felt like everything in her life was exactly where it was supposed to be. Buddy would run into her arms, his tail wagging so hard it seemed like it might never stop. She would scoop him up, pressing her face into his fur, inhaling the familiar scent that had once been her only comfort on the loneliest nights. But even with this arrangement, Emily sometimes caught herself staring at him, feeling an ache she couldn't quite explain. She had saved Buddy, given him a second chance. But had she done the right thing? Was he truly happy bouncing between two homes? Or had she only made things more complicated for him? The doubt crept into her mind late at night, when Buddy was asleep beside her, his tiny body curled against her chest. She would run her fingers through his fur and whisper, "Are you happy, little guy?" He would sigh in his sleep, nuzzling closer, as if answering her unspoken fears. One evening, after dropping Buddy back off at Margaret's house, Emily walked home alone, her heart heavy. She wanted to be happy, to feel content with the way things were. But something inside her felt unresolved. As she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, a single thought echoed in her mind. Was love supposed to feel this incomplete? A week later, something happened that changed everything. Emily was at the shelter when her phone rang. Seeing Margaret's name on the screen sent a jolt of panic through her chest. "Margaret," she answered quickly. The voice on the other end was trembling. "Emily, it's Buddy. Something's wrong." Emily's heart stopped. What? What happened? He collapsed. He wouldn't eat this morning, and then he just fell over. Emily's breath came in short gasps. "I'm coming," she said, already grabbing her coat and running out the door. The drive to Margaret's house felt endless. Every terrible thought imaginable raced through Emily's mind. Was he sick? Had she missed something? Had all the stress of moving between two homes been too much for his little heart? By the time she arrived, Margaret was standing at the door, tears in her eyes. "He's inside," she whispered. Emily ran past her, dropping to her knees beside the small bundle lying motionless on the couch. "Buddy," she breathed. His eyes fluttered open weakly, his tail barely wagging. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm here," she whispered, gently stroking his fur. Margaret sat beside her, her face pale. "The vet said it might be his heart. He needs tests. But Emily, they said it could be serious." Emily felt the world tilt beneath her. "No," she choked out, "not him." She swallowed hard, fighting the lump in her throat. "We'll do whatever it takes," she said firmly. "I'll take him to the best doctors. I don't care what it costs." Margaret nodded, squeezing her hand. "We're in this together." That night, Emily didn't leave Buddy's side. She lay beside him, whispering stories about their time together, reminding him of every moment that had led them here. "Remember that first night," she murmured, "when you wouldn't leave the diner, and I had to sneak you food. I thought you were just a stray. I had no idea you were going to change my whole life." Buddy let out a small sigh, pressing his nose against her wrist. Tears slid silently down Emily's cheeks. "You have to fight, little guy," she whispered. "I can't lose you." The next few days were a blur of vet visits, tests, and restless nights. Every time Buddy's small body trembled, Emily felt a piece of herself shatter. But through it all, one thing became clear. She couldn't do this halfway anymore. Buddy wasn't just a dog she had saved. He was family, and family didn't belong in two places. They belonged together. One evening, as Emily sat beside Buddy's hospital bed, Margaret walked in, her face unreadable. She took a deep breath, then said the words that changed everything. "Emily, take him." Emily blinked in shock. "What?" Margaret gave a soft, bittersweet smile. "I love him, but he belongs with you." Emily opened her mouth to protest, but Margaret shook her head. "You're his person. You always have been." Emily's throat tightened, and before she could stop them, the tears came. She reached for Margaret's hand, squeezing it tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, when Emily took Buddy home for good, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. He was still weak, still healing, but he was where he was meant to be. As he curled up beside her, letting out a soft, content sigh, Emily pressed a kiss to the top of his head. "You're home, little guy," she whispered. And for the first time in forever, everything felt right. Days passed, and Buddy slowly started to recover. His energy was still low, but every time he lifted his head to look at Emily, his eyes shone with the love and trust that had always been there. Emily stayed by his side, refusing to leave him alone for even a moment. She would stroke his fur, whispering to him in the quiet hours of the night, telling him stories of all the adventures they would still have together. "You and me, buddy," she would murmur. "We're in this for the long haul." Margaret visited often, bringing Buddy his favorite treats and sitting beside Emily as they watched over him. "You know," Margaret said one evening, a soft smile on her lips, "I always knew you two belonged together. I was just too stubborn to admit it." Emily squeezed her hand. "You were his angel when he needed one. I'll never forget that." One afternoon, as Emily sat on the floor beside Buddy, gently rubbing his ears, she noticed something, a spark in his eyes that had been missing for days. Then slowly, he lifted his head and wagged his tail. It was small, barely more than a flicker of movement, but it sent a wave of hope crashing through Emily's chest. "Buddy," she gasped, "you're getting better, aren't you?" He let out a small huff, nuzzling into her hand. Emily laughed through her tears. "That's my boy." Over the next few weeks, Buddy's strength began to return. His steps became steadier. His appetite came back. And soon, he was following Emily around the house, just like he used to. The first time he brought her his worn-out toy, she nearly burst into tears. "You want to play?" she whispered. Buddy wagged his tail, dropping the toy at her feet. Emily scooped him up, pressing her forehead against his. "I love you so much, little guy." Margaret, seeing Buddy's recovery, knew she had made the right decision. "He was meant to be with you," she told Emily one evening. "And look at him now, he's happy." Emily nodded, holding Buddy close. "Yeah," she whispered, "we both are." As Buddy healed, something inside Emily healed too. She had spent so long doubting her place in the world, wondering if she was strong enough to keep going. But Buddy had taught her something. Love was worth fighting for. And no matter how lost she had felt, she had never truly been alone. One evening, Emily sat outside with Buddy curled in her lap, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson. She ran her fingers through his fur, a deep sense of peace settling over her. "We've been through a lot, haven't we, Buddy?" she whispered. Buddy looked up at her, his eyes filled with a love so pure it made her heart ache. As the first stars appeared in the sky, Emily made a silent promise. She would never take a single moment for granted. She and Buddy had found their way to each other against all odds, and that was something she would cherish forever. And so, with Buddy by her side, Emily stepped forward into a future filled with hope, love, and the unwavering belief that no matter what came next, they would face it together.